I am here with Jason and Simon. It is a pretty cold day. I guess you guys wouldn't think it's cold, but it's cold for us here in LA with sprinkles of rain. We're supposed to get a lot of rain coming up because of El Nino and stuff. But El Nino is not the name of the newest flyweight that HBO is trying to sell us. That's not who it is. But anyway, guys, Jason, you were at Madison Square Garden. Simon, you were off in the woods somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have both caught up, and you've seen Golovkin and Lemieux. I mean, obviously Simon, or not Simon, but Jason, you saw it live. You watched it live too, right, Simon, with no problems?
I did, yeah. I managed to get Wi-Fi in the cabin and watch it with my mum.
Nice. Now, here's what where I wanted to start on this one, is that this was a pretty out-of-character fight for Golovkin. We saw some things that Golovkin did during the fight that he just, we don't normally see this. And the main thing is, I think it stems from Golovkin really taking Lemieux seriously. And you tell me, nobody had hit Golovkin as hard as Lemieux had, because Golovkin made some faces in this fight that we hadn't seen, and they usually coincided with Lemieux landing a punch. So, what's your guys' take on that?
I agree with you that he made faces when Lemieux made a punch. Excuse me, when Lemieux landed a punch. He definitely...
You're starting to talk like Golovkin now.
He definitely had an expression on his face when he would land that he seemed angry. He didn't seem hurt or afraid, in my opinion, but he definitely seemed very angry every time Lemieux landed a punch on him, and then he would just follow it up with 3 or 4 more punches, though that were significantly harder. I think the story of the fight was the jab from Golovkin was so sharp that it negated everything David Lemieux had to offer. Every punch, the majority of the punches that Lemieux threw, it's not like they were missing GGG. They were completely whiffing from, at least a foot away.
Yeah.
Partly to do with Golovkin's jab, but I think mostly to do with Lemieux when he wanted to engage and try to cut the distance, was so afraid of return fire that, he was very, very tentative about how close he would get in.
Yeah, I know the jab was obvious and it was effective for Golovkin, but to attribute his success to his jab, which I see a lot of people doing, you're not telling the whole picture here. This is not the whole story. And if you're just going to say the jab, you're going to ignore a ton of other great things that Golovkin was doing. And, I understand if you don't, you just didn't see it, fine, fair enough. There's some people that, they just saw that, oh, well, that's the punch that's landing the jab. But Golovkin's footwork, the distance, the way he used his lead hand, not only as a jab, but to measure Lemieux and keep him exactly where he wanted. And then the way he would... you could tell when Golovkin threw a combination or something and it didn't work, and often it didn't. He didn't land 100% of his punches. There were times when Golovkin's combinations didn't work. But what he would do is he would come back and then set it up a little differently and then land it. Simon, you said you watched it with your mom, and I get the sense that your mom is probably, she doesn't have her own boxing podcast and doesn't watch every single fight like we do. So what did she think of the fight? I just want to know, what was a casual's opinion of this fight? Was it entertaining? Was it boring? Was she impressed with Golovkin's stoppage or anything like that?
Yeah, obviously she was impressed with him and the way he handled himself, and the way that he conducts himself inside and outside the ring. I think it's clear that Golovkin's on course to being a sort of crossover star where the more casual audience can buy into the guy as well as the boxer.
This is what I want to ask you then. So you said he occurs like a good guy in and out of the ring. I wanted to get your take, and this is what I talked about on the solo podcast, but what do you think of that hit after Lemieux took a knee? I think Lemieux was clearly down and Golovkin knew it. What do you guys think?
We've seen this from Anthony Joshua as well, and I don't think that it's anything more than just being in raw instinct mode and the adrenaline, and I don't think it was calculated or vindictive. Do you think that it was a major tipping point in the momentum of the fight?
Here's my input on that. Golovkin knocks down his opponents consistently. And consistently, we've seen him pull his punches as they go down again and again and again. Like you could find plenty of clips of his pulling his punches, as fighters are starting to go down. I think, like you just said, this was his first pay-per-view. He's in front of 20,000 people at Madison Square Garden. The place was as insane as any Cotto fight I've ever been to as far as atmosphere and, people, chanting and yelling. I think he was just swept up in the moment, and it wasn't malicious or with any intent to hurt Lemieux. There was no bad blood during the buildup of the fight. There's nothing in my opinion, to indicate that this was done with any malice. I think it was just being caught up in the moment.
Okay, well,
Garcia Peterson.
I think one of the things that he talked about was Golovkin's expression, and that he looked maybe nervous or worried or anxious on this fight. On entry to it, and I don't know what to make of that. I mean, I'm inclined to think that if there were any anxiety or fear coming from Golovkin, it would be about how to look in this fight, because he's almost looking past this fight, looking towards the future, and it's that catch-22 where if you look too impressive and explosive, you're going to scare off major names. If you look boring, people are going to try and get the better on you in negotiations. So it's about striking that perfect balance where you look entertaining, exciting, but also beatable or flawed in some way, so that people are enticed to come and have a go at you. So I think that in terms of anxiety, it was probably mainly to do with how he comes across and what impact that will have on future matchups.
What struck me as a change in his demeanor was, which may be a little bit counter to what I just said about him, not pulling that punch, was that there was a couple times I felt in between rounds where Golovkin would do that thing that some boxers do and kind of just stand in the ring after the bell rings and stare at their opponent as their opponent walks down to get a rest, and it's like almost this psychological effect too of like, well, I'll just stand here. I don't need to get back to my stool in a hurry. And plus like giving him a menacing look at the same time. That's not really something that I had seen Golovkin do in the past. Usually it's just, maybe a nod or a touch gloves and, walk to the, corner to take a rest. But there was a couple times where Lemieux like really stared him down in between rounds and was like, you think you're a tough test for me? Look. Like, that's the impression I got, at least.
Well, I think a lot of that stuff, if that's true, then there was some way that Golovkin viewed Lemieux that he hadn't viewed his other opponents before. And I said it before this fight, and I think I was right. Golovkin knew what he'd gotten himself into, and I noticed that the things changed after the first time Lemieux really got him with a good shot. And it was like one time in like the second or third round or something. It wasn't like this happened from the outset and, Golovkin was like, oh, crap. No, it was, it happened a little later. And that's really what changed things for Golovkin. And I think this was really the first fight Golovkin's been in where it's like, I can lose. I could get caught here. And obviously Golovkin is way too talented and skilled for Lemieux to actually have beaten him. I don't think maybe 99 times out of 100 Golovkin wins a fight with Lemieux.
So you think it was oh damn, this guy has a puncher's chance.
Right. I think Golovkin just saw like, okay, I'm mortal here.
Yeah, maybe.
Because, Golovkin's been invincible. He's smiled and had fun in fights. He's had Abel Sanchez telling him go in there and, try this out and practice this and have fun.
Right.
That wasn't the case this time. And part of it was that this is a pay-per-view. We have a future as a top draw in the sport, although not as bright as their future as a top pound-for-pound star in the sport. But just the magnitude of the fight combined with Lemieux is actually quite dangerous. That added a different wrinkle to Golovkin's game that we haven't seen. And it was good because I think we saw a lot of what HBO was telling us for a long time about Golovkin. Is that he has this amateur background and he's great and all that stuff, but like we've said it all along, Golovkin doesn't move his head. He gets hit a lot, and in this fight he finally started to take these things seriously. And part of Lemieux's ineffectiveness was all Golovkin. It wasn't that Lemieux's. Actually, it kind of is that Lemieux was kind of clueless in there, but I want to give Golovkin some credit here.
No, you can definitely give Golovkin a little bit of credit on his defensive, abilities. But I think his defense came more from ensuring he was out of range from Lemieux rather than head movement. Just he did a masterful job at
Yeah.
managing distance in this fight. So there's a couple different ways to defend. One of them is to do that bobbing and weaving with your head. Another one is to make sure that your opponent can't hit you, and get in and out quick enough. I think Lemieux's a lot of it also did come, like I said, from Lemieux's tentativeness to stalk truly and truly stalk, Golovkin and get within punching range. And my honest opinion is that Curtis Steven hit him harder and backed him up more. There was a point in the Curtis Stevens fight where Stevens landed a really solid 1-2 right to the face of Golovkin, and Golovkin took like 5 steps backwards. Was there a punch that landed that hard in this fight? I mean, Lemieux got a couple through, but I think if you're talking when was Golovkin hit the hardest and cleanest, I still think it's those punches from the Stevens fight.
Maybe. I do think that Lemieux hit him harder. But maybe. I don't know. Golovkin did. HBO's claim that he was hurt in the Stevens fight. I didn't think so. I don't think he was hurt in this fight.
Backwards in the Lemieux fight. In the Stevens fight, at least he took a couple steps backwards. In the Lemieux fight, maybe he took like one.
I think a lot of this is still Golovkin developing. He hasn't been challenged like this. The Stevens fight. I mean, you can count 3 fights where he's had some adversity, and it was the Uma fight, the Stevens fight, and now the Lemieux fight. And I mean, we're calling it adversity, but geez, I mean, it's not really a big deal, Mayweather faced bigger adversity when he broke his hand and had to take a knee. Andre Ward was dropped by Darnell Boone when he was young. Adonis Stevenson was knocked out. Kovalev, I think.
Kovalev won a split decision against him.
Darnell Boone. These guys have faced adversity, but Golovkin's been able to win a lot of fights with just his power.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the bottom line. His power, obviously, even at the top level of this sport, is something that holds up, and it's something that's, rare for fighters. One of the points that I mentioned in the pre-fight viewing guide was that typically as a fighter progresses their level of competition, their power wanes. That hasn't come to fruition with Golovkin. What do you think, Simon?
I don't know. I think that it's not so much power in the sense that when we talk about a knockout artist who loses their power in the upper echelons, it's because they relied on flash knockouts from the perfectly timed shot that they had to get off. But with Golovkin, it's that kind of overbearing power that is, I don't know, cumulative. And because of that fact, he's going to continue to wear people down and stop them.
Right, like more rather than just power, a power combined with pressure, right? I mean,
yeah, exactly, sustained pressure rather than. I mean, power is probably the misleading word. I mean, when we talk about flash knockout artists, it's about a swift, precise shot that's not necessarily about power, but just about a beautifully landed hook or precision shot.
But I guess the other point is though, once the competition comes up, the chins on those guys are better, so some of them could even, withstand those beautifully timed shots or those, things like that. But there's just nobody that Golovkin's been able to face recently, 7 years and 21 fights now that has been able to stand up to it. What do you think Lemieux's game plan was?
He didn't have a game plan.
What you saw?
He didn't have a game plan. Lemieux's game plan was to
do
try to
boxing.
Fight Golovkin, and this is not fight. This is box. Right? But look, we're starting to sound like HBO with our praise of Golovkin, and I think we got to jump off of this topic because we got a whole list of things to talk about, and we really do sound like HBO talking about Roman Gonzalez right now. So let's transition into the Roman Gonzalez fight. Here's something pretty interesting. I was listening to Max and Marcellus today, and they were talking about the fight. And Marcellus had never heard of Roman Gonzalez before. And he said, Max, as somebody who didn't hear about Roman Gonzalez, and then you guys are telling me now that this guy is supposed to be the best pound for pound fighter in the sport, I wasn't impressed. What do you guys got to say about that? And remember, Marcellus watches boxing in that, he'll watch what's on HBO or what's on Showtime, and he'll order some pay-per-views. He's not a hardcore at it, but at the same time, is there any credence to what he said?
I suppose that how much stock you put into, Valoria's chances going into the fight. Valoria was a prohibitive underdog, right?
Pretty big underdog.
Pretty big underdog going into the fight.
His his odds were pretty close to Lemieux's chances.
Yeah, so let's not pretend we saw, a 50-50 fight on paper. We have to, be reasonable with what we saw. But with that said, just to preface it, I thought he did very, very well against a fighter who came much more prepared and with a game plan than Lemieux did, right? I think
that wasn't hard.
Seriously. I seriously though, I think Valoria came out there not thinking this fight was a foregone conclusion and that he did have a shot. Had Valoria had more power and been able to get Roman's respect a little more, I think the fight could have been a lot more competitive because Valoria was doing a lot of good things in there, but so was Roman. And the fluidity with Roman's combinations was what impressed me most. Once he was able to put punches together, and the bottom line was Roman was just stalking and trying to get Valoria to the ropes, and every time Valoria's back hit the ropes for the first half of the ring, he was able to cut and slide off and try to get the fight back into the middle of the ring. But it was in those final moments of the fight that Valoria's back hit the ropes. He couldn't fight back, and it was just over. Pound for pound worthiness, obviously he's up there.
What about you, Simon?
Yeah, I don't know where that criticism's coming from. What tangible aspect is it that they're looking at and being unimpressed with?
Well, you could see in that fight. So, I was watching closely, and I did see that Valoria had success in
he did
in
very
spots.
well.
He was able to counter Gonzalez. Gonzalez hit him with the big shots. Let's not make any mistake about that. But was Valoria landing punches? He certainly was. You could say that Gonzalez's defense is not, it's probably not even top 10 in the sport.
I thought Valoria.
He's good. He's good, but
yeah,
I thought he did very well considering how big of an underdog he was. Too.
Are we looking at a fight though between two top 10 flyweights and being amazed that it was a bit competitive? Come on.
Was Valoria a top 10?
Top 10 flyweight at the time? You know what
Simon,
I mean?
Yes or no?
All I'm saying is, he could have been on some rankings. There's enough rankings to suggest that he might have been.
He's not going to be miles out, but my point is that it's a couple of top rated people,
top rated fighters, right?
And we're amazed that he had a good level of success. And it's like, I don't think that there were many rounds that you probably have for Valoria. It's just he had some pockets of success.
Absolutely, yeah.
Does someone like Amir Khan or Keith Thurman trouble Floyd Mayweather? I swear this is on topic. No, right? See, those are guys that are rated 4 or 5 in their division. If you look at super middleweight, does George Groves give Andre Ward any trouble and leave anybody after the fight thinking, oh, I don't think Andre Ward's, a pound for pound fighter?
No, of course not.
So I think Gonzalez still is one of the top pound for pound fighters in the sport. Let's make no mistake about that. But was there room for criticism? Sure. I can completely get where he was coming from and saying that I wasn't that impressed, especially given it was his first time seeing him.
So do you want to criticize Gonzalez or do you want to praise Valoria? I think there's really two ways of looking at this fight.
I think we should praise Valoria.
My immediate walk away, like when I was walking out of the garden, was, oh, wow, Valoria did a really good job. And I thought he did, really well in spots, and had he had power, it could have been a different fight, but, he just wasn't able to gain that respect, but he did touch, Roman Gonzalez quite a bit. And, but did it make me think any less of Roman? No. So now that's where I'll
Yeah.
differ from Marcellus. It didn't make me think any less of Gonzalez as much as it just made me, pleasantly surprised with what Valoria was able to do.
No, I'm with you guys. That's with you, Jason. That's a good point. Is that I don't have any different opinion of Gonzalez. He's who I thought he was. One of the
I think
top six fighters in the sport. But
almost
Valoria,
Simon, how you felt after the Kovalev Pascal fight.
you feel the same way that Simon did after.
No. I think Simon. Yeah, exactly. I feel the same way that Simon did after the Kovalev Pascal fight. Like, oh wow, Pascal was able to do,
That
more than you expected.
Yeah, I think that's fair, and it doesn't take necessarily that much away from Kovalev or, in this case,
exactly.
Gonzalez.
Yeah, it doesn't take. I don't think it should take too much away from Gonzalez. It's just, Valoria was really game and had a great game plan, and did well.
and
And I think it's unfair for you to draw a comparison to people like Ward and Mayweather because their styles are so much different. Gonzalez isn't someone who is styled in that way where they can be such a night and day runaway.
okay, Simon.
What?
Let's see. You guys didn't listen to HBO, but sitting at home watching this, I gotta say that their praise of Gonzalez was really annoying. It was
it
overboard.
over the top and
You know the way
ridiculous?
they were
Yeah.
about Lomachenko in the past?
Yes.
It was worse than that. So it was so off-putting to listen to that. It's like, could we just watch the fight? Do we need to keep gushing about footwork and all that stuff? Like, could you
Just out
just
of
call the
curiosity,
fight?
Was it Hagler Hearns? Did Hagler Hearns come up or anything?
Oh boy. This isn't Showtime, so I don't think so, but
Max,
don't quote
Max
me on that
brings,
one. Don't quote
Max
me
will
on that
bring
one.
up the Hagler Hearns every once in a
They
while.
brought up some
maybe
old
once
school
a
fighters.
broadcast. Yeah.
No. I wanted to tell you guys, Donnie Nietes also fought. And Nietes, he shut out this Mexican fighter. Pretty game dude who came in and, tried to win, but, that wasn't happening. So Nietes neutralized him and then battered him, didn't get a stoppage. It's really not Nietes' style, but at the same time, he was completely dominant. He does not look like he can be beat at 108 pounds, and he said that his sights are now set on 112 pounds, and he wants Roman Gonzalez. And I think of any fighter around Gonzalez's division, with the exception of Inoue, the only guy I think that's like a legitimate challenge and could actually possibly win the fight is Donnie Nietes.
But they have
It'd
to
certainly be
fight in
competitive.
Monaco.
No, I don't think so. I think the fight's either going to take place here or here on the next Golovkin undercard.
Gotcha.
I'm trying to think. They could stack a card with Golovkin versus anybody, and all you got to do is put Gonzalez and Nietes on there, and that's the two best
done deal.
fighters
That's
in
the new
different
favorite.
divisions.
We're not doing Gonzalez Estrada 2 anymore.
Well, Estrada already lost, and Estrada's style doesn't. It's just the thing with Nietes. It's like we could ask for Stevenson versus Kovalev. We could, but Stevenson versus Ward and Kovalev versus Ward are more interesting because Ward brings something to the table that the other doesn't, and that's
It's
like
new, and
defense.
new is always better.
No, it's defense. It's not that it's new. It's defense. He has the ability to neutralize these guys, and that's what Nietes has. Is like all the other flyweights, as good as they are, and even in a way, they're not going to neutralize Gonzalez. They're not going to take away his offense. They're just going to try to fight fire with fire. Nietes will not do that. He does not play that game.
It's a bit more than that as well, because in the case of Estrada, it's not that we think, oh yeah, that's going to be they're a favourite now, or that they've improved so much. It's that it was fun the first time around. There was a good level of success, and it's like a placeholder fight where, in lieu of someone super competitive, that's a really nice matchup.
Gotcha.
Right, and I'm not saying that that's not a fight I'd like to see, because I would like to see him fight Estrada again, but if we're talking about who's going to give him the best challenge, I think Nietes even surpasses Inoue, simply because Gonzalez can stay comfortable at his division and Nietes can come up. Whereas if he wants to fight Inoue, he's going to have to go to Japan, which is a whole other list of logistical problems we're now running into. Plus, he's got to go to Inoue's division. So now let's talk about Lee Selby. He won a decision over Fernando Montiel on ESPN. Simon, what'd you see in Selby? You didn't see any hand extended block in the eyes?
I really enjoyed it. I thought that, there's been... I've not held my tongue on some of Selby's previous fights where there's been tactics that are... I don't enjoy when he's using the, extended hand, pushing people's guards out of the way, doing all of those sort of tricks that it felt like it was the only thing he had to work with. But in this fight, he did it all by the books, and he looked very human doing it, and he looked very limited doing it, but it was real, and it was him trying to put on a decent and fair fight. So you've got to respect that.
Well, you're probably just saying that because Montiel was able to take advantage of Selby not expecting certain types of attacks, and Selby got tagged quite a few times. Tell me that there's no truth in that.
No, I totally agree. I think it plays to my point, though, that if he's willing to fight in a boxing match rather than push people's faces around, he will be a bit exposed, but he managed to come out with the result he wanted. And yeah, he took some lumps for his troubles, but he did it the honest and hard way.
That's a very nice way of insulting Selby. I thought it was a pretty good fight, entertaining, and Montiel came out, talk about good game plans. Montiel came out with an expert game plan on how to really make Selby uncomfortable and make Selby work. And Selby did. He had to work with stuff. He lost some rounds really clearly to Fernando Montiel. And we, like with the Valoria fight, did not see much chance for Montiel. I didn't think Selby would stop him, but I was pretty sure that Selby was going to win this fight. So good job for kind of a good job for Montiel, even though he lost. But better job for Selby for successfully defending his title. Now on to Devin Alexander. Let's see. So maybe a year ago, Devin Alexander was one of the top 10 welterweights in the world. In fact, let's pull up the rankings of a year ago.
Based off of what? I never understood how he got ranked. Yeah, I never understood how he was ranked so well. But that's just my opinion.
That uppercut to Juan Urango. So a year ago, I think I want to go back even further before he lost to Sean Porter.
You need to go about 18 months.
Yeah, so let's just go March of 2014. This guy was rated. Oh, he was still rated. He was in the top 10. Paulie Malignaggi was in the top 10 last year, but he was like the 9th best welterweight in the world. With Robert Guerrero above him. But Alexander's fallen. He's taken a loss to Amir Khan. He's taken a loss to Sean Porter, and now he's taken a loss to Aaron Martinez.
Good for Aaron Martinez on this one. Aaron Martinez really got jobbed over big time against Robert Guerrero in that StubHub a couple months back.
I keep forgetting that he lost that fight because I was about to make a point, and I would have sounded really stupid right now.
Sorry.
Thank you for saving me. That
welcome for interrupting me.
That Martinez has 2 wins over top 10 former top 10 welterweights, and he should be in the top 10 at welterweight, which is really stupid. But technically, they were at one point in time top 10. Did you guys actually watch this fight?
Yeah.
No.
No. Oh,
no,
boy.
I was very busy this weekend.
No, it was not good.
Was it ugly?
It's a Devin Alexander fight.
Yep.
Alexander, tried to box, and Martinez did what you do when Devin Alexander boxes, and everybody knows the answer is pressure. And he couldn't deal with it. Talking about pressure, though, the Fonfara versus Cleverly fight. They threw something like 25,000 punches. Most of
Try
the punches
again.
that were landed were on Cleverly's face. I don't know if you guys did. You guys see the picture of Cleverly?
Oh, with the
Yeah.
broken nose. His nose must have been broken, right?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know, but it definitely looked broken to me.
Yeah.
He was a bloody mess, smiling through blood. But
Well, good for Fonfara's like, kind of later resurgence here. He's going on quite a tear. At
I
least
don't agree. I think there's a poor outing for him in terms of his stock.
I was about to also disagree, but I wasn't going to say that. I was going to say that Fonfara has done good, and he's done things that we want to see him do. Like, who didn't want to see him beat Chavez Jr.?
Yeah, of
Who didn't want to
course.
see him beat up Cleverly?
Mm.
I mean, except for you British people. But who are these guys? Like, tell me who the other guy is that Fonfara's beaten
It's
since
there's
losing to
this
Stevenson.
there's this persistent belief that Chavez Jr., despite being coddled, is actually a top name in the sport in terms of talent, and not like top 10 pound for pound, but he's very credible and good fighter. And there's this unwillingness to face the facts that he might not be that good, especially now. And so for Fonfara to beat him, it puts a lot of weight into Fonfara as this guy is excellent. He's managed to completely stop Chavez Jr., and therefore he's fantastic. And to keep that narrative alive, when he has a tense, duel with Cleverly, it somehow made Cleverly's stock rise. People have elevated him rather than say, "Oh, Chavez Jr. must really be broken if that Fonfara, who's come into a hot exchange with Cleverly, was able to get rid of him. It must be because Cleverly's back and is doing well now. Fonfara's fantastic, and Chavez Jr. is also fantastic, and look at how well they've all done to get by each other." I think that we've got a good name in the division, but not the best or a very strong name in Fonfara, beating poor opponent in Chavez Jr. and a mediocre one in Cleverly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
fair points, but you can't say that his resurgence with the fans and there's a little bit of hype surrounding him isn't true.
Oh no, of course.
You know what I
that
mean?
part. Yeah,
Like,
that
he's
part.
had a career resurgence,
Yeah,
Like there was a point after the Stevenson fight where nobody was very interested in him.
Well, after
That has now gone.
Stevenson, they were interested in him because he managed to
Well,
drop
because
him.
he had managed to drop him and
But
do a little bit
before,
good. That's a good point. But before that, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, there was
no,
a where he really wasn't on the
yeah.
map. And now he's
In
managed
terms
to
of
get on
his
the map. He's
hype,
staying on the map.
definitely.
Yeah.
Fonfara
Yeah,
is what he's done since fighting Steve, not since actually in fighting Stevenson, and from there forward, like any fighter would trade their title to have those kind of wins because he's had all
That's
the
what I'm
right
saying.
types of wins and losses.
And the fans are behind him. Like
Mm.
he's really had a resurgence, in my opinion.
And this is a guy
Yeah.
that's failed a drug test in the past. So
Yeah, what I was talking about in terms of
Oh no, you're
disagreeing
talking
with the
about what is the
resurgence,
position
a
again?
skill resurgence.
Right.
Well, I was
Yeah.
saying, has he found his peak form and he's killing it now? No,
No.
but has he reignited his love with the fans and things like that? Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
you don't
Yeah.
need skill to connect with the fans. Ask
I
Amir
guess-
Khan.
Those are the differences that I was gonna say
You're supposed to
Ruslan
keep going.
Provodnikov, but
All right, and so
Lucas Matisse.
there was something else I wanted to say on this fight, but let's just
Brandon
move on to
Rios.
the Kameda versus Kono fight. So these two guys, super flyweights, go to war. They don't break the record, but they did land a lot of punches. They did throw a lot. It was just a brawl between these two. Kameda was controversial. He low-blowed Kono a few times, had points deducted, got dropped by Kono. Kameda gave just as good as he got most of the time, but Kono edged him out, and it was a really good fight. I don't know that it's like a fight of the year or anything, but it was a really good fight. I would love to see a rematch of these two guys. And I mean, man, if they don't do a rematch, Kono should go and fight Inoue. I know Inoue likes to, take on the biggest fish that he can find, and that might be Carlos Cuadras or somebody like that. But I don't know. That'd be an interesting fight for Kono, is if he wanted to go take on Inoue. And obviously, I don't see any way he walks out of that fight on his feet. But at the same time, that's a big fight in Japan, I think. Kameda's not happening because Kameda ain't allowed back in China. Or, sorry, not China, Tom. In Japan, fighting there. All right, you guys weren't bothered by this fight. All right, well, Lamont Peterson.
Only to get your opinion on the scores, I guess.
Fine, they were fine. I thought Kono was the one who was truly comfortable fighting that fight. That he was the one that was pushing that style, I guess we'll call it, and that pace. Whereas Kameda was doing it just because that's what they were doing. And Kono was the one who was more active, and for my money, landing the better shots. So I don't have any problem with the scorecards. I had a problem with the Peterson and Diaz scorecards, though. So these guys go to the decision, and it was a really interesting fight because Peterson looked early on like he was fighting a guy who was way out of his depth. Peterson was bigger, and then using, there's guys who are big for their division and don't know how to use it. Paul Williams comes to mind. He did not know how to use the fact that he was 6 foot, 100 or whatever he was. Lamont Peterson was using his height advantage at the beginning beautifully. Diaz is 5'5", and he couldn't touch Peterson. And then all of a sudden, Peterson remembers, oh, wait a second. I'm Roberto Duran. And he stepped inside, and that's when things got crazy for him. And that's when Diaz really took over in that fight and won a bunch of rounds. Peterson also took a couple of rounds off, which I think were crucial. I knew he was going to take off the 12th round, but I was like, he cannot do this. If he does this, he might end up losing this fight on the cards. But Peterson won a majority decision. One judge saw it a draw. The other ones, both other ones saw it for Peterson. One of them quite wide, actually. I saw it like 9-3 for Peterson, which is just not the fight that I saw, even though there were swing rounds. And, whenever there's swing rounds, you can't be too upset with scorecards. But this is a really good fight as well. I think Diaz really showed that this is a guy that we need to see in bigger fights in the welterweight division, if that's the division he wants to fight in. Same with Peterson. He did fade. He did take off a couple of rounds when he didn't need to, and it looks like, it was more like Peterson sabotages himself in fights by doing stupid things like not pushing the pace when he's clearly ahead, or not doing the little extra to win a round when it's even. But at the same time, Peterson's a name. Diaz looks like he could legitimately give trouble to anybody. And I mean like anybody. I don't think any welterweight easily beats Diaz. Now, does Kell Brook beat him? Does Keith Thurman beat him? Does Manny Pacquiao beat him? Probably. And they'd probably be solid favorites. But do they have an easy time with him? I don't think so. All right, guys. Pritchard Colon. He fought Terrell Williams. And this should have been an easy win for one of these guys because they both had power. They're both undefeated. And they both
see these cards are stuff I didn't see because I was out in the woods. So how did this one pan out?
Well, Colon lost, dropped twice in the 9th round. Now there's some weird stuff going on. So Williams hit Colon in the back of the head, intentional or unintentional. You can't really tell. And the fact that Colon was bending at the waist away from Williams, it's always bad if you want to not get hit in the head. Like, that's something you shouldn't do. And Colon went to the floor when that happened and was rolling around, and he was in pain, and they gave him some time, and then he came back and fought. And then he gave Williams a pretty intentional low blow, got 2 points deducted from him. Williams ultimately got some points deducted for punching behind the hand later. And after the 9th round, they took off Colon's glove, thinking the fight was over.
Defeat or?
No, they thought the fight was over. Wink, wink, though. And then when the referee comes, it's like, what are you guys doing? You give up? They're like, no, we thought the fight was over. They're like, no, it's not over. So they tried to put it back on, but the referee was like, wait a second, this is bull. And he called the fight and disqualified Colon. Rightfully so, though. I think that fight, if that fight would have went on for one more round with how Colon was battered and then had sustained all the punches behind the head, I don't know. Colon's in critical condition right now in a hospital. if he would have fought that 10th round, who knows what would have happened. Colon might not be alive right now. I don't know. But that
But so with
bonehead
the
move
gloves
might have
coming off
saved him.
thing, you think that they were deliberately doing that in order to preserve his record, or what?
I only say this because that was Pedro Diaz in the corner.
Try and get a no contest done, or what?
Probably. But that was Pedro Diaz in the corner.
They could have been doing it just to try to save him from any more further punishment.
But they should have said, we give up. That was Pedro Diaz in the corner. This guy is a master. He knows what he's doing. He's one of the better trainers out there. If his guy was done,
to snake it.
He was done. Yeah, this is a guy who I don't think would have been shy about saying, okay, we're done here. You've got nothing left.
Well, maybe he didn't want, maybe he was trying to take the heat rather than Pritchard Colon having to take his first loss and make it feel like it was because of him. You know what I mean?
The trainer
maybe he was
could throw
trying
the towel in at any time.
Yeah,
I mean, it's pointless because whatever they did was the right thing, because Colon didn't have to go out for the 10th round, and he absolutely should not have. And the thing is, I went on a pretty big rant about this in the podcast I did by myself, but this is ridiculous that a guy gets hit in the back of the head, and in the moment it looked like he was acting, and a lot of people were calling him names in the thread and stuff because it looked like he was faking it. But in those 5 minutes where he was just standing there in the corner with everybody waiting for him to start fighting again, no doctor came over and checked him out. We didn't run any tests or anything like that. And that's something that needs to get put in place.
No doctor came in and checked him out after that?
I don't think so. I mean, I have to look. There's a lot of boxing this weekend. I didn't go back and watch that fight. Yeah. But there should be some sort of protocol where insane. In those 5 minutes, we actually use them to be productive. We have the tests. We have the technology now where we can kind of look and see, all right, is there an onset of a concussion here or not? And I think there's a lot of fear that you'll lose your O because you get stopped by the ring doctor or something like that. No, in this case of a punch behind the head that causes a concussion, that should be ruled a no contest.
Even beyond that, you can lose a lot more than your O by not taking care of yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened here now. The poor kids in the hospital.
Exactly. And there's got to be policy change with this stuff because there's so much of this pride. There's so much of this, need to be tough and all this stuff. But, Mayweather's right when he said he's retiring at this time because he wants to live out the rest of his life with his wits fully about him, with all of his money intact. And it's stuff like this where that doesn't get to happen. If you do this stuff where you go out and keep fighting, even though something doesn't seem right to you. I mean, Colon went to the back, and we immediately found out during the telecast, I think it was during the Peterson fight or something, that Colon had went to the back and was on his way to the hospital because he had puked in the dressing room. I've had a concussion before, and the thing that happened, the first thing I remember really happening after it had happened when I gotten hit was that I threw up everywhere. And immediately I knew, it was like, okay, telltale sign that this guy's got a pretty bad concussion. Luckily for me, I didn't have no brain bleed, or at least I don't know. I think I've turned out okay, but I also didn't go on getting punched in the head for 8 rounds or so.
Right.
So yeah, that was the Colon and Williams fight, and Williams got a win. And Williams was game. He came out and he really shocked a lot of people. He was able to take away a lot of what Colon was doing. And Colon looked good in the fight. He just had some lapses. But this is definitely one of those fights where this is what you get when you put 2 undefeated prospects in the ring together. Also in action this weekend was Demetrius Andrade. Raise your hand if you did not know that Demetrius Andrade was fighting this week.
I did know that he was fighting this week. That's
because he was fighting down the street from your house.
Yeah, exactly. And I do really like him.
Somebody put a flyer on your door.
Stop it.
Guess what the outcome is.
That would have been more promotion.
I didn't see this fight, so what went down?
Well, I want you guys to guess what happened.
Andrade by wide decision.
Andrade by stoppage.
If you would have guessed Journeyman knocks out Demetrius Andrade in 3 rounds,
I would think you're crazy.
Really?
Well, guys, he's been out of the ring for a while. And he managed to get himself another stoppage victory over some guy who was, guys, this guy looked tiny. He looked tiny.
Okay, you phrased that in a way that was crazy.
I was worried. I thought you were saying that a journeyman had knocked Demetrius Andrade.
No, I was doing that on purpose. I wanted you guys to think.
Okay.
I wanted to make people sweat a little. That a former world champion, a guy who passes the eye test, who looks like he's legitimately the real deal, got knocked out. But obviously that didn't happen. He just destroyed this guy. A left hand. I saw the guys he hit the floor so hard, and the thing was crazy because Andrade was way bigger than this guy. You could tell there was sometimes okay, he's a class below him. This guy's 3 or 4 classes below him. Did not belong in the ring with him. This is the kind of guy that you see on the bottom or the second line of deep British cards that are not on Sky or not on Channel 5 or nothing. Those guys that are with those promotional companies where it's they never get on TV. It was that guy. So, and then the other thing is Kubrat Pulev was also fighting this week, and he got a decision. He boxed the guy. The guy could not box better than him. What's that?
Felt a bit lackluster.
Well, it's Kubrat Pulev. When does Kubrat Pulev look, with the exception of the Klitschko fight, has Pulev ever looked wow, that was impressive? No.
No, but in terms of level of competition, I wasn't wowed.
No. I mean, the thing I have to remind myself, because I was going to destroy Pulev when I was preparing, but then I remembered, oh yeah, you just had your brain scrambled by Vladimir Klitschko. I'm going to give you a little
had
pass.
A year out or whatever, yeah.
Yeah. So let's look at this week, guys. Joseph Diaz is returning to fight Ruben Tamayo, who is not red and does not have orange hair.
Green.
Or whatever. You say Tamayo, I say Tamayo. Frankie Gomez will also be on the undercard. And the real question on this card is, can Frankie Gomez make weight? If you don't remember, he was supposed to fight Humberto Soto on the, what card was it? The Matisse Postal fight. No. Yeah, it was Canelo Kirkland.
Canelo Kirkland.
He was supposed to fight on that undercard, and then he failed to make weight by a lot. And so they threw him off, and now he's
renegotiate the contract, and then still failed to make weight.
That is some real Chavez Jr. stuff there. All right, and then also in the UK, it's not Kell Brook anymore, but Chris Eubank Jr. is going to headline his very first matchroom card against Tony Jeter for the interim WBA Super. I don't know. I don't even know what division he's going to fight in, because I doubt they really care about weight at this point. At this point, they're like, okay, we just need Chris to be impressive here. Nobody's coming. They've all asked for a refund. He got injured.
How? In training, machete to the leg? What are we talking about?
His fight was going to not be a pay-per-view, and it hurt his feelings so bad that he got injured.
Oh, it was an emotional injury. I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but that's not what the press really said. So
no. Of course not. Nope.
Let's not slander anybody here. Although this isn't Frank Warren, so I'm sure we won't get any lawsuit. If it was a Frank Warren fighter, which Chris Eubank used to be, we would definitely get the lawsuit.
So Klitschko, Pacquiao, and Kell Brook all went to the same doctor this year?
You guys want to know who the co-headliner is? Jason, I'll mail you $100 if you can guess who the co-headliner is in 3 seconds.
On this card?
Yeah. Yeah.
A prospect getting smashed by Kamitsky.
No, Kamitsky fought last week, so he's really not. I
was going to say back. Sam Eggington, but then
he's coming back. No, he was out last week as well.
Yeah, Sam Eggington got dropped yesterday or the other day in his fight. Yeah. He fought. He won though. He won, but
obviously
it's Gavin
There's
McDonald.
No brakes on the egg train.
Shut up.
It will only crack.
Gavin McDonald against Jeremy Perotti. All right, so let's talk about some real fights now. And by some real, I mean one real fight. The only other notable fight this week is the return of Bud, Terence Crawford, versus Dierry Jean. You know, that lightweight guy who's pretty good at lightweight, but not great, who moved up to super lightweight and then lost to Lamont Peterson and then went back down to lightweight and has been pretty good. Well, he's back at super lightweight to fight Terence Crawford in Omaha, Nebraska. Should be a great environment. I think Terence Crawford's going to easily outpoint Jean. I don't know that he stops him. Jean's really tough. He doesn't really have that style where he's going to expose himself to get knocked out. But, it's cool to see Terence Crawford back in the ring, and they got to keep this guy active and ready to knock out Manny Pacquiao whenever he gets cleared to return to the ring.
Exactly. They got to keep him active enough so that he's in the public consciousness. So when he does have to fight Pacquiao, people know, who he is. Fair assessment for that fight. Crawford's not one. Crawford will step on the gas if he's got you hurt, but he's also very comfortable in just using his boxing ability to outpoint a tough fighter as well. We've seen him do it against Klimitsky. We've seen him, or Klimov, sorry. We've seen him do it against Klimov. We've seen him do it against Ricky Burns and Ray Beltran. He's not going to force a knockout, but if there's one to be had, he'll take it. So I think it's definitely fair to say a fairly wide unanimous decision. The thing I love about Crawford is he'll lose, some of those opening rounds, maybe 1 through 3, 1 through 4, while he's kind of working things out in his head, figuring out your style, feinting and watching you react. He's got a very technical approach to fighting. So, it wouldn't be crazy to, watch him lose a couple rounds and then really turn things on. And that's what I like about him is he's almost always fighting a little bit of a comeback initially, so it makes for his fights a little bit interesting. But he always manages to make the correct adjustments, and he always manages, to move forward and win fights.
What do you think, Simon, about Crawford and his future as a pound-for-pound fighter?
We're just waiting for that promise to materialize, and I think all of the checks and balances make sense that he is someone who's going to go far and be special, but we're just waiting for that. I don't know. Him coming to his own, I guess. Because I think, do we like Dierry Jean as a pick for opponent?
No.
So here's the thing. Dierry Jean isn't the guy that's going to bring him to that, real pound-for-pound status. But, if you're just looking at eye test-wise, yeah, I think he's one of the better pound-for-pound fighters out there.
Who, Dierry Jean?
Jean is just a poor pick.
Dierry Jean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's just full of milk.
You know what I suspect might happen, and if it does, it's going to be really tragic. It's that Crawford's career might get held hostage waiting for that Pacquiao fight. I think Top Rank and HBO
to leave Top Rank
Yeah.
and go without
He is
Heyman.
just waiting for that beat to kick in.
Right.
It's never going to happen.
exactly.
Here's
And
the problem. Name me potential opponents for him with Top Rank. Who
Bradley,
are
Jesse Vargas, Brandon Rios, Manny Pacquiao, Konstantin Ponomarev, Mikhail Zuiski, and I think I've run
Postal.
out.
well, I mean, if you're counting Golden Boy fighters.
No.
no,
Okay,
Postal's
Postal's with Top Rank.
Top Rank, Postal.
But if we are going to include the Golden Boy fighters, then there's Matisse,
Yep.
which is not happening. Obviously, Matisse's got a long road of recovery
Go on.
ahead of him.
So skip ahead.
And Frankie Gomez, Humberto Soto, was that guy that
Provo?
beat Humberto Soto up, whose name I cannot remember now. On the
John Molina,
no,
who lost to us.
no. John Molina's with PBC.
Provodnikov.
Provodnikov, yeah.
Yeah. So
are any of those wins like?
none of?
I
There's
think you're
one
about to
of
say what I'm
those
going to
that
say.
is, there's one of those wins that is significant. 2 maybe if you rate Bradley high. But I
doesn't.
don't ever think I know, but I don't. That's why I prefaced it. But I prefaced it on the back end. I don't think that Arum will risk putting Crawford in with Bradley because I think he wants those two on divergent courses, as money makers winning their fights rather than devaluing each other. So Pacquiao's really the only fight for Crawford under Top Rank that is of any significance. And to watch just what appears to be such a talented fighter get matched up, again and again and again, that's my fear. Is that's what we're going to run into with him, and the carrot of Manny Pacquiao is going to be dangled ahead of him, saying just fight this one more fight, this one more fight. But how great would Terence Crawford versus Manny Pacquiao in Omaha be?
Are you dreaming? That's not going to happen. There's no way Manny Pacquiao ever fights anybody in their hometown unless they live in Vegas. No way.
Or Macau.
Name me a welterweight who's also Chinese. Go ahead. I'm going to wait here all day long because you're going to have to go to BoxRec to find out who is Chinese and welterweight.
It's not untrue, but yeah, I think that there's every chance that Arum is going to mess this career up.
Oh God, I really don't want to hear you guys saying that. So I'm going to change the subject and just say that. Did you guys hear who Bob Arum was saying? Pacquiao saying that they're going to find out who his opponent's going to be within the next couple of weeks, and the names getting floated out. There are two that stand out. Two. Timothy Bradley.
Icky Yang. Oh.
No, it's not Icky.
Vargas.
He's
No,
the number
it's Bradley and
Chinese
Marquez.
male welterweight.
Bradley and Marquez.
Is pension not kicked in yet?
Apparently not, because he still wants to fight Kell Brook or something.
That'd be quite fun, to be honest.
No, it wouldn't be, because Marquez, he's gonna show up. I mean, this is a cash grab. Marquez had knee problems. Everybody knows that Marquez should just retire. He's old. This isn't a division where you can stick around and it's not that kind of division. This division is unforgiving.
Very unforgiving.
It's Kell Brook.
Kell Brook, what about him?
Well, I just think that in terms of who Kell's been in the ring with, that'd be a fun fight, because what Marquez lacks in functional knees, he makes up for in technicality and IQ. So
I'm not going to stand for these Sergio Martinez jokes.
in whatever capacity he returns in, I think it'd be a fun test for Brook.
Right. I mean, I would just like to see Marquez stop for the first time in his career by Kell Brook, but that's just me. But I also would like to see Terence Crawford fight Marquez. If we're going to throw Marquez back into the active fighters pool,
give him Crawford.
Give him Crawford.
Crawford needs to make his name off the back of someone,
Well, it's going to be Pacquiao whenever Arum's ready.
I hope, but I don't know that.
All right, let me just go down the list of other guys who are in action. On the Crawford undercard is Mikhail Zwiecki, who's going to return off of his loss to Konstantin Ponomarev. Andy Ruiz Jr., who's going to fight Rafael Zambano-Love, who you may recognize has been knocked out by such and such heavyweight recently. Evgeny Gradovich is back off of his loss to Lee Selby. And Alex Saucedo is an interesting prospect. He will fight Angel Martinez. These are all streaming on toprank.tv. And it'd be nice to catch all these prospects in action. Let's jump onto the news. The big news, the biggest news of the week, in my opinion, is that Andre Ward will indeed appear on the Cotto Canelo undercard. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. You have a great fight in Cotto Canelo, and then you get to see Andre Ward fight. The guy is a master.
Against who, though?
I don't care if he's fighting a mop. Or someone like David Lemieux,
Who is it realistically?
I don't know who it is. I didn't read the article. I just saw the headline.
I agree. I love the idea of him he desperately needs to get back in the spotlight because his main rival just had a massive sellout at Madison Square Garden as the main event.
Well, that's not his rival anymore.
Well, it depends on who you ask. Sure, I think what you're trying to get at is say Kovalev's his rival.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm still trying to think who it might be.
I just want to say that Ward is a crazy bastard. He chooses Kovalev instead of Golovkin.
Well, he hasn't chosen anything yet, so let's not call him a crazy
Well,
bastard.
the plan is already said. They've already said that their plan is they're going to 175 for Kovalev. Here's the crazy thing. Well, Simon thinks of who this opponent could possibly be. The last time that Ward fought more than once in a year was 2011. Yeah. Crazy. You think they could get Felix Sturm over?
Yeah.
You think
I'm
Chad Dawson too?
Ooh, Chad Dawson too. At Chad Dawson's comfortable weight? No, come on, leave him alone. That's not even funny, man. That's mean, actually. Who would you like to see him beat up?
Wait, are we talking because he's been floating between 168 and 172? So what weight class are we talking? Is he fighting a light heavy?
That's what I'm thinking of.
Heavy, or is
he's going to fight somewhere in between, I'm guessing.
Well,
what if they bring in Alfredo Angulo?
Stop it.
Talk about irresponsible fights.
Yeah, the most irresponsible thing is Virgil Hunter would have to train both of them. And
I forgot about that.
See if Sakio Bika's free.
So Ward can beat him up again.
I'd like to see. Though.
Maybe Golden Boy will be bold and say, Vyacheslav Shabransky, there you go, buddy. I know you were almost murdered in your last fight, but here's Andre Ward for you. And you know that Ward would do the business to Shabransky.
Upcoming contingency in like Lepikin and
it's Shabransky. Maybe they can bring Woosteisen over.
Just a quick question: isn't Cotto Canelo relatively soon?
It's mid-November.
So we're talking 6 weeks out.
Well, I'm pretty sure Ward has known the whole time that he was going to fight, and it was just a matter of.
Yeah, I don't give a shit about Andre Ward. I'm more worried about who they're going to bring in.
It's about 4 weeks.
They're going to bring in some psychopath who wants to get paid.
Who's going to fight Andre Ward on 4 weeks' notice?
That's not smart. Yeah, right. No.
Okay.
We all know that this is not a smart idea. If your plan is to be a success in boxing, do not take a fight against Andre Ward on 4 weeks' notice.
Oh, guess what?
Or at all.
Or at all. And then, hey, that's how Terence Crawford made his name, though, against Prescott. Or unless you're saying don't fight Andre Ward at all.
Can I throw something out there? Yeah. So that's true. And that's also how Evgeny Gradovich got his name.
Yeah, with Billy Dib.
Yep. And, we've seen that break 2 different ways. One's a multi-division weight champion, and the other one is Evgeny Gradovich.
So, do you not like Lepikin for this?
Well, has he sorted his issues out with his dad? Because I really think that he made his dad angry in that fight. Or he was angry at his dad in that fight. And
I just think if you've got... So, you're a 17-0 prospect.
Come across Chilemba. Has a loss. Lepikin lost in his last fight.
Yeah. So you're 17-0. You come across Chilemba. You take an awkward loss against a troublesome person to try and put the emphasis back into your campaign. You take a big risk.
Oh no.
There's
taking
a big risk, and then there's like standing in front of a train.
Yeah, but they're not going to see it that way. They're going to have that just conviction and confidence that the dude's like 30 odd. He was in prospect phase a year ago. He needs to get his career a move on. And if he can't get it a move on, get cashed out.
Maybe he can fight Bernard Hopkins, because I'm not sold on Lepikin as an opponent. I don't like that idea. I think if you care about Lepikin, you sit him down and you're like, wait a second. I know you fought on HBO before and it was really cool, but do not take this fight. You will lose.
It sounds like he's going to get hurt, though, isn't
it? He might look like Paul Smith at the end of the fight. That wasn't hurt, but that was
1,000 needles.
Yeah, exactly. But that wasn't good.
Yeah, Ward will pick you apart.
Can you just fight Hopkins? Hopkins always claims he's in the gym 24/7, so let's just do it. Full 175. The WBA will probably create a new title for this. I think this is I like my idea here.
Ward Hopkins would be a fantastic fight.
Let's be honest. Who wins that fight?
At 175?
Yeah.
I'm going to favor
You're going to miss
Ward.
an obvious joke.
I guess I already did.
Insomniacs.
Ooh.
I love Andre Ward. I love Bernard Hopkins. Don't think I'm trying to diss them.
It's going to be a slow pace fight, though.
But that
Is
was
what
low
you're
hanging
getting
fruit.
at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since Edwin Rodriguez is at 175, we could do a rematch.
Oh, stop it.
All right. So Kell Brook, I mean, we already touched on this. He's off the card in what's now 2 weeks from now.
A machete to the heart.
Something like that. Or maybe it was a poison dart or something. Al Heyman, he got a win in court. Basically, the judge is throwing out most of what Top Rank was trying to sue them for, as our very own Simon predicted. I mean, but basically, if you had, any shred of reading comprehension, you could have read through that and said, well, this is kind of, you might as well have written this in crayon.
Which I think they did in the first draft.
They drew some pictures of what is that term called? The radio,
They,
the payola?
they drew a picture of, it was the radio payola, but they drew some pictures of Al Heyman with some, like, smelly lines over his head and an arrow that said duty head, and that was, like, one of the addendums to the case.
Was Heyman's face, like, just, like, all colored in, and there was a white question mark over it?
Yeah.
Antonio
Little
Tarver,
death horns.
he, guess what? You'll never believe this. He tested positive for a performance-enhancing drug, except this is the second time he's done this now, from that Steve Cunningham fight, which ended in a draw.
I'll let everyone surprised.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible news. And then the other terrible news is that John Pascal is going to get a rematch with Sergey Kovalev. All indications seem to point to that. But somebody here on this podcast, of the three of us, is not upset about this fight being announced and is actually welcome of it. Go ahead,
Who's
Simon.
that?
It's you.
Oh, yeah, it's me. Yeah.
So please
I
explain what you're thinking.
what I'm thinking is that
I
we're
very
in a
rarely
landscape
strongly disagree
where-
with you, by the way.
All right, well, save your disagreements until I make my case. So we're in a landscape where you've got people like Mohammedi that are going to become opponents for Kovalev, unless we get some, this matchup with Pascal. The Pascal fight was interesting, it was exciting, and Pascal had fleeting moments of success that were exciting, even though brief. I would rather that fight again than have him go against people that are not worthy to share the ring. So if a Pascal rematch was getting in the way of a more important fight, of course I'd be against it. But all signs indicate that they're letting this one ferment out, and they're going to waste Kovalev's time with meaningless fights. And if he's going to be wasting his time with meaningless fights, at least make them fun, meaningless fights. And I think Pascal's proved that he can provide that.
Well, except for that, the last time we saw Pascal, he lost, or well, at least he should have. If you look back in your memory, the first thing you probably remember about this fight is like Pascal got beat up pretty much, and then you remember, oh yeah, but he didn't get or he got the decision. The other guy should have got it. Maybe that other guy should be in this fight with Kovalev.
I don't think so. And to be honest, my opinion of Pascal was fairly low going into the Kovalev fight, and I was impressed by him in that fight, and there was nothing he could have done in his recent outing that would have made me lose respect for him as a fighter. I think that he performed exactly as the Pascal I thought he always has been.
So limited.
It's just limited, and in a style matchup with Kovalev, it just seems to gel and create some fun.
I think that's just because Pascal is willing to take risks, as Kovalev is, clearly doing his offense thing. Jason, what do you think about this fight?
I'm kind of middle of the road on it. Simon makes a good point about, what's it holding up? And if it were to be holding up something, there's two fights that I want to see: Kovalev Stevenson, Kovalev Andre Ward. I'm not getting those fights. That's very disappointing. In the meantime, what I'd like to know is why does Kovalev get a pass, whereas Golovkin doesn't get a pass? Golovkin continually gets backlash from fans saying he fights bums, he doesn't fight anybody, blah, 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 blah. Look at the majority of Kovalev's televised career on HBO. I don't understand why the guy gets such a pass.
I think it's because Golovkin is becoming a crossover star, and because of the wide casual fandom, people that are a bit more into boxing than the general public like to be a bit counterculture and think the opposite of what everyone else thinks, just arbitrarily. And because Kovalev isn't that much of a star outside of boxing yet, there isn't anything to counterculture against. But where Golovkin's getting recognised by people that don't follow the sport super closely, like my mum, for example, that's spreading that reputation, I think that there's an element of boxing fans that just like to think the opposite of whatever the general public thinks.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
fair.
Yeah, I was about to say that is a fair point.
It's fair. What's that to say
I don't
about
know.
me? Then?
I'm not happy with this fight. And I know that the very next natural question is, okay, well then if not Pascal, then who? Who then do you want Kovalev to fight? Who hasn't he beaten? Who is out there that we could actually make a fight with? And now obviously how long has it been since 2009 that we are clear that there are boundaries in boxing that don't get crossed? And what are we going to do? We're not going to sit here and argue about them because it's been done to death. But there are guys out there that I think Kovalev could be making a fight with. And I think they could put him on the shelf a little longer, another month, and see who else appears available. Jean Pascal, in his last 3 fights, has a no contest, a loss, and a very controversial win over Unieski Gonzalez. And I think the first step they should do is try to make that fight with Gonzalez. I think in that fight you saw that Gonzalez had power and the chin to contend with Kovalev and at least make things interesting. We know how Pascal's going to go. Is anybody going to sit here and tell me that Pascal showed you something that he could do anything more than make it interesting? No. Okay, you're not doing that. So the real solution here is to fork out the money and bring Jürgen Brähmer over here.
That was my next point.
Jürgen Brähmer. Yes, that's the answer to our questions here. Jürgen Brähmer. Oh, you don't know who Jürgen Brähmer is?
It's the answer to all of our questions because all roads lead to Jürgen Brähmer. He's, one of the top 10 pound for pound fighters in the sport and super exciting. But can you really see him traveling for such a low value fight for him? No, don't laugh because it's just Kovalev, isn't it?
It's just
Kovalev.
Look, there's no way that we're going to bring Jürgen Brähmer out of his backyard for the pittance that would come along with a Kovalev fight.
But
and it's understandable, and you can't criticize him for it.
You got to remember that Jürgen Brähmer's 37 years old. He's not getting any younger. And these fights, they're not going to be here forever. And I think Jürgen Brähmer's at a point in his career where these guys need to start calling him out. You can't avoid him forever. He's been sitting in Germany, knocking out and outpointing everybody they put in front of him with his southpaw rocket of a left hand. It's time that somebody actually stepped up to the plate.
Same story with Klitschko. That people trying to build their own brand without going through the proper channels, though. People trying to claim they're the kings of the division without dethroning, the old guard. And we've seen it with Klitschko. We see it all the time. And I think we'll continue to see it where, Brähmer's easy to ignore because of how good he is.
And, there's a couple
and
of
he's
things
got a hard last name to pronounce.
There's two things that people want to bring up about Brähmer, and it's like, first, he's lost before. Yeah, he lost almost a decade ago. Get over it. Manny Pacquiao took losses too early in his career, and we forgave them because he avenged them. And the other thing is that, Jürgen Brähmer doesn't travel. That's bull. He won the vacant interim WBO title in Hungary. Who fights in Hungary?
And he was. Exactly.
And he knocked the guy out. So I think it's time we start demanding that Kovalev try to unify titles and fight a guy like Jürgen Brähmer.
I think you did make a very good point about him in that fight time, and he was very hungry. Very hungry
exactly.
for a win. Yes.
Oh, man, I never catch these things. So, yeah, that's about it for the news. And that's about it for this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. Simon, just I'm real curious. Where do you go camping in England? Like in a forest?
It was in a forest.
England is just
camping
London,
as much.
right?
We were in a cabin.
Well, because my picture of England is like Lord of the Rings. So just fields of like hills and grass, green grass. So
Imagine that, but with more trees.
Hmm.
And there we go.
like what was it close to? Was it close to London or was it close to Ireland or
About
Nottingham.
an
Scotland?
hour north of London.
So you were almost in like France or something if you drove for an hour.
I probably could get to France in similar time or quicker.
Yeah, if I drive
Shuttle?
for an hour, I don't leave LA County.
No, if you drive for an hour in LA, you make it about 3 miles.
No joke. You try to drive an hour on Wilshire Boulevard in rush hour, you will get literally 3 miles probably. All right. Thank you for listening this week's podcast. You can leave us comments. You can leave us email. You can hit us up on Twitter.
Forget about all that. Go to Jurgen Brammer's fan page and leave him comments. We don't need it. He needs it.
Demand that Kovalev fight. Actually, Kovalev's the one who doesn't want Bramer, so you should go to Kovalev's fan page, if he even has one, and demand he fight Jurgen Bramer, the man.
Go to the main event's Twitter feed and just flood it.
Hey, and they will respond to you. No joke. Do not make
They
a joke
really
about
will.
any main events fighter. They respond. Whether you're Adonis Stevenson, whether you're some random dude, they will respond to you. But they don't respond to our requests for interviews. Just kidding. We haven't made any. We know better than that. We're trying to get Jurgen Bramer on because we know what the people want, and you guys want Jurgen Bramer. Anybody who wants to come on, you should message me. We do want to bring some of you guys on. Make sure you rate us, subscribe to us, and we'll be back next week with maybe 2 episodes.
What did you say right beforehand? You're like, this is Sunday Puncher. It's over. Like, how'd you phrase it again?
I don't know. What did I say?
I can't remember.
Hey, why the fuck does TBRB have Mikey Garcia in their top 10 list at
They
junior
thought you wouldn't
lightweight?
notice.
Yeah, I fucking noticed, guys. How's he number 2?
Because of his great recent contributions.
No, you're looking at old records, dude. They don't have them.
Oh, yeah. I'm
Remember,
looking
you
at March
pulled up historical
2014.
recorse.
Yeah. Oh, my God. No wonder. That makes sense
Okay.
because I was looking at it. I'm like,
Okay.
oh, Deontay Wilder 8. Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay,
I
listen,
swear
that's
I was thinking that.